have a special treat for you today. I'm going to read you a story, one of my favorite stories of all time, that reminds me of how I need to organize my life, my priorities, my dreams, wants, and desires. I'm going to tell you right now, there are 3 dogs here. One's a puppy, so you'll probably hear them in the background. But I read this story for the first time probably 20 plus years ago. And it has always remained in my heart, and I go back to it time and time again. The title of the story is The Clock That Was Really an Egg. I promise this will be really short. In ancient times, the people of a certain village lived close to their goddess, Huitaka. Always, she was in their midst. And it was due to her presence that the people lived as if every day was someone's birthday, which of course it was. The people of the village worked hard, but if they were tired, they rested completely. If they were hungry, they ate. And they never made a bowl or a basket, a boat or a blanket without adding the finest colors and pictures they could imagine. The people strove to make the objects of their effort reflect the beauty of their goddess. So they sewed the birds and the skies onto their clothes. The grasses and rivers blew upon their berry pots. When the people of the village lived close to Huitaka, they lived with feeling under their skins. In those days, just any time at all, the people made music. Huitaka, they called. Come with bananas and bangles on your braids. Huitaka, come dance with us. Then into reeds the people blew, and onto drums they beat. The seeds of gourds shook, 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 and in color and singing, the feet and bodies of the people stamped and swayed. Eyes shone, and mouths drank dark pink juice, and skins gleamed with sweat diamonds. Huitaka whirled in the center fast as fire, and her chants spun men to men, men to women, and women to each other, and back again the other way. Huitaka laughed and whooped and panted. Her people clapped and hugged and leapt. Sometimes when the reed blowers slept, and the fruits lay sucked dry near the spent honey wine skins, Huitaka lay quiet with her people and looked at the sky. During the day, the villagers and their goddess, found animals in the clouds. In the night, they cooled themselves under the scarves of shimmers that were the stars. Huitaka, the bringer of perfume and play, jewelry and ornaments, soap and oils, touching and love. When the people of the village lived close to Huitaka, they lived with feeling under their skins. One day, at the beginning of a big change in the village, Bochica arrived that day. Since he was a stranger and a tall and strong one, the people gathered around him. Bochica had something the people had never seen before. It was small and round with markings all around the edge. Is it an egg, the people asked? Touching the markings they thought were very funny shaped speckles. No, it was a clock. Bochica told them. He explained how the clock could measure out minutes and hours and days. What's that good for? The people wanted to know. Bochica seemed surprised. What's it good for? He asked. Why, without this clock, you can't make enough things to sell and buy. What's sell and buy? Asked the people. Bochica shook his head. Now he seemed really surprised. Look, he said, you own a few things, right? Right, said the people. Well, if you had a lot more things, you could take them to the next village and get money for them, and with that money, you can buy even more things. The people shook their heads this time. We have enough things, they said, but they allowed Bochica to stay in the village with his clock and to make a home there. Every time the people called to their goddess Huitaka, Bochica shook his head. Huitaka and her bangles and her bananas. He muttered, what good is all this music when there is work to do? Time passed, and Bochica continued to tell the people how fine it would be to sell and buy. For a long time, the people didn't listen to Bochica. With Uitaka, we have all we need, they told them. We're afraid your clock would make us forget that. After a while, though, the people began to listen. They listened so much, in fact, that they did begin to forget Uitaka. They stopped putting oils and perfumes on their skins. They didn't remember that every day was someone's birthday. On the day that people decided to make Bochica their leader, Uitaka let out a cry. "Hoo!" she called out, and it sounded like a moan. When no one heard her, she turned herself into an owl and flew away. No one noticed except one little girl. I was going to tell you I'm going to cry, so just forgot to mention that. "Mama, I saw Uitaka turn herself into an owl and fly into Bochica's egg," said the little girl to her mother. "Shh, child," said her mother. "Besides, that is a clock, not an egg. Bochica will make a fine leader." The people told each other, "He's tall and strong, and his clock will help us make enough things to sell and buy." The people did not know how the clock would help make things for them, but they soon found out. The clock told Bochica what time it was, and Bochica told the people when to work and when to stop, when to eat and when to sleep. Bochica walked all day among the people with his clock. "That wall is taking too long," said Bochica. "Hurry up." "But Bochica, we're painting beautiful pictures on it," said the people. "Well, while you are wasting your time on pictures," he said, "you could be making things to sell to the next village. Time to move on." Bochica thought that if every day is a birthday, then that means that all days are alike. No need to have a party on an ordinary day now, is there? He said, "Too much work to do." And he strode by, telling people not to dawdle, to get busy, and to wake up. Bochica never liked it either if someone made something he didn't know the name of. "We're making things to sell," he'd say. "Who's going to buy that thing? And if they don't even know what it's called, how do they know how to ask for it?" Many years went by. For a long time, people remembered when they had laughed and danced and made music. Sometimes they even tried to call Uitaka, just like in the old days, but she never came. And Bochica got angry if he heard them calling her or trying to make music. So after a while, the only one who thought a lot about Uitaka was the little girl who'd seen her change into an owl. That little girl grew up and told her daughter the story, and that daughter grew up and told her little girl the story. By this time, too, Bochica was old. He looked pinched in the face and very thin. Late one hot afternoon, even Bochica got tired. "I'll sit down under this tree for just a minute," he said to himself. He carefully set his clock beside him and then fell asleep. Bochica began to snore. A little girl picking berries nearby looked up when she heard Bochica snoring. She saw his clock beside him. Now this is the very same little girl whose mother and grandmother had told her the story of Uitaka the owl flying into the clock. So she wasn't at all surprised to find, when she crept very close, that the clock looked just like an egg. She touched it with one finger. The egg clock was warm and pretty. The little girl picked up the egg with both hands. Certainly, the little girl meant to take that clock to her mother to show her how very much like an egg it looked. But in a second, the little girl had dropped that egg clock. And with a whirring of wings and a great whoo, Uitaka herself flew out of the cracked pieces on the ground. "Hoo, hoo," sounded Uitaka. People were so busy, they didn't even notice at first. But the little girl began to run. "Uitaka, that's who," she yelled. "Uitaka." "Hoo, hoo," said Uitaka. As she circled above the village, people began to look up from their work. Their spines began to tingle. Huitaka, called the little girl. Huitaka, it's your birthday. Then just like that, in the old story her mother had told her, the little girl called, Huitaka, come with bangles and bananas on your braids. Huitaka, come dance with us. People stopped working. They looked at their hands and stretched their necks. They arched their backs and began to smile. People began to move. A man broke off a reed and began to blow it. Another turned over a pot and began to beat it. The seeds and gourds began to shake, shake, shake. And a ribbon of color and song began to form under the people's patting feet. Bochica woke up. My clock, he cried out. He gathered the broken pieces to his chest. Back to work, he yelled. But no one heard in the swirl of music. A chain of dancers pounded by. A woman scooped up the numbers from the clock to decorate their hair. The stars on the scarf of the sky began to sugar the night. With a great flapping of wings, Huitaka took woman form again, and her braids stood straight out as she whirled fast as fire at the center of her people. After that night, the people of the village never again forgot Huitaka. They did not forget Bochica either, with his selling and buying. But once again, they took the time they needed to reflect the beauty of their goddess in the things they made. No more work without making music. No more eating and sleeping, only when it was time to eat and sleep. They ate when they were hungry and rested when they were tired. The people began to live again as if every day were someone's birthday, which of course it was. The people began to live again with feeling under their skins. Thank you for listening. I hope that story touches you in some way.